Okay, so it's about 1 p.m. right now, so I'm going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today that's on the call. Just want to kind of recap this panel today is being hosted by YPY USA, Young Professionals in Yachting. My name is Katie and I'm the volunteer chair for our local chapter. Just to recap for our panelists today, YPY is composed of 6 chapters globally. So we have participation in Monaco, the UK, Netherlands, Germany, and New Zealand. So thank you for those of you that are staying up late or joining us really early today to participate in today's panel. The purpose of today's panel is really to bring together leaders in the marine conservation community. Today we have on the line 1,000 Mermaids, Ocean Rescue Alliance, and Coral Restoration Foundation to really discuss their mission and current developments that they're seeing in ocean conservation work. It's also an opportunity for those of us in the yachting community and maritime industry to really learn how we can play an essential role in bridging good business practices with ocean conservation health and resources. Each of us joining today on the panel is kind of called or found love for the ocean, whether it's like the majesty or the natural beauty, kind of romance of the ocean. So it's really important for us to understand that each of us are stakeholders in making sure that we protect the ocean environment. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our 2 panelists today. The first panelist we have on with us is Ms. Alice Granger from Coral Restoration Foundation. She's the communications director there. CRF is a nonprofit that manages the biggest coral restoration effort in the world. Alice has been with CRF for about 2 years. Prior to joining CRF, she spent 5 years as the senior editor for 2 of the world's leading dive magazines, Scuba Diver Australasia and Asia Diver. Previous work included working with USAID, doing work in Egypt, as well as Ziri Biomimicry Program in Switzerland, as well as working with Reef Doctor, which is a marine conservation NGO based in Madagascar. So she brings with her a wealth of global knowledge and expertise. So thank you very much, Alice, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here to chat with you all.
Thanks. We're also delighted to have Ms. Shelby Thomas, who is the COO and Director of Research for both 1,000 Mermaids Artificial Reef Project and the Ocean Rescue Alliance, which engineers artificial, artistically crafted reefs for ocean reef conservation. She specializes in marine conservation and restoration, has her master's in marine ecology, and is currently completing her PhD in marine biology at University of Florida. Her previous work has included restoration projects with coral, seagrass, sea urchins, scallops, and oysters. So tremendous also amount of knowledge and technical experience. So thank you very much. So I'd like to this point kind of roll into sharing a little bit about each of your organizations, kind of getting us associated with what each of them do. So I have 2 videos to share. So I'm going to start with Coral Restoration's video as I pull it up right now, and then we'll transfer into 1,000 Mermaids just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a taste of what you do, and then if you'd like to afterwards share and expand on what we saw, that would be great. At the end of the panel, after everything, as we have a great chat, we have about 10 minutes for those of us joining. So if you have any questions or want to take notes or anything, we'll be sure to make time for that as well. So let's dive in and get started. So I'm just going to pull up. You can see my screen. Okay.
millions of generations, these coral reef gardens have flourished in tropical areas. They are the oldest and most biodiverse ecosystems on our planet. And this could all change in our lifetime. In just the last 40 years, Florida reefs have lost 97% of the once dominant elkhorn staghorn corals. In the next 80 years, all shallow water coral reefs could become extinct. The speed and impact of such a widespread loss of life is unprecedented. Our reefs are dying. Something had to change. We are Coral Restoration Foundation, and we manage the largest active reef restoration program in the world. We employ a variety of techniques that allows us to monitor and ensure genetic diversity amongst our corals, and we are continuing to evolve and find new methods by collaborating with NOAA and other organizations. We start with our coral nurseries. Our coral nurseries are comprised of coral trees, a coral growth design pioneered by us that's proven to be twice as effective as other coral growth methods. In Tavernier Nursery, there are over 500 trees, equivalent to 1.5 acres, an area that's larger than a football field. With our 7 nurseries, we can produce 45,000 corals every year. Once the corals are reef ready, we reintroduce them to the reef in a process called outplanting. After chipping off the top layer of accumulated algae, a putty-like epoxy is used to glue the coral onto the reef surface. The clusters will grow together and form thickets, recreating the foundations for the coral reef ecosystem of the Keys. As of 2020, we've returned more than 100,000 corals to the Florida Reef Tract, restoring an area of over 8,000 square meters. In the next few years, we will be working to restore more than 90,000 square meters. And this work matters. Coral reefs support 25% of marine life, sustain coastal communities, and have an economic value of over $10 trillion. The necessity of this mission is abundantly clear. And it wouldn't be successful without you. We rely on passionate and hardworking volunteers to help restore the reefs. And although our waters are warming and ocean acidity is increasing, the corals that we've returned to the reef with your help have been thriving. Florida reefs are healing. We believe that in the same way we are working to restore the reefs, others can find a similar way to help the world and its oceans. So find the cause that speaks to you and get involved. All ecosystems are interconnected and every positive action matters, be it big or small. We are Coral Restoration Foundation, and we are dedicated to saving the reefs, one coral at a time.
We have one more video. Okay. We had a chance to see both of the videos. I just wanted to give you both an opportunity. Oh, let's see.
It's August and we're in Northeast Florida.
There we go. Okay. I just want to have an opportunity to maybe expand on what we saw a little bit. I don't know, Shelby, maybe you first want to start, or Alice, to kind of give us maybe a little more detail about what we were seeing, maybe what we didn't see that your organization also is working on. And I don't know which one of you wants to take the first stab at it.
Definitely. If you want, I can start first. So as you guys can see, we are a nonprofit that promotes marine conservation. We build artificial reefs. That video specifically was more highlighting on the Thousand Mermaids Artificial Reef Project, where this was an eco-art project to help bring awareness through using sculptures and ecotourism, bringing divers, and just creating a unique ability to connect people with the ocean. And our new nonprofit that has recently founded, the Ocean Rescue Alliance, really expands further on that mission, incorporating all different types of art and unique diving locations, including interactive dive modules and memorial reefs. And that's one of our really important ways we're wanting to help connect the community and also get people to care about the ocean. As we know, especially working in marine conservation, it's hard to get people to care. And the ocean sometimes can be out of sight, out of mind. And so how do we get people to care and actually take a little bit of ownership and responsibility for their actions? Especially nowadays, things can kind of be distributed as like, oh, it's their problem to deal with, and just kind of how the first quote that led off with the Coral Reef Foundation. We can't just leave it in somebody else's hands to fix. So that's one unique way, is helping create that connection through memorial reefs. Maybe if you had a loved one or family or company that had a reef, maybe they'd be thinking a little bit more on a daily basis and conscious efforts to use less water, recycle, or whatever that may be. Beyond that, we also have an education program. We hope to inspire our future generations to get more engaged with marine conservation. And our citizen science program, the Coral Rangers, we engage local communities in coral restoration and reef monitoring efforts. We really highlight our ability to make unique modules that provide habitat. So our focus is creating modules that provide micro and macro habitat with interstitial spaces for fish. Because certainly as reefs are starting to degrade, we're wanting to provide alternative habitat space that smaller fish can take refuge in at different life stages. So these spaces enable smaller fish to be able to seek away from predation and further enhance fish biodiversity.
Okay. And Alice, I didn't know if you wanted to have an opportunity as well to maybe expand on what we saw a little bit with Coral Restoration's video, other projects, some of the science behind it.
Sure. So yeah, we have a lot going on at CRF. As said in the video, we're the largest group, or the largest coral restoration effort in the world, simply by virtue of the size of our in situ coral nursery. So in situ is in the ocean. But our programs are centered around 3 pillars, which is the restoration, the active restoration work that we're doing, science, and education. So the restoration program, those are the guys who are out there every single day. You know, our staff, our interns, and our volunteers, they're out there every day physically restoring the reefs. And the amount of corals that we've been able to get out has been increasing exponentially year on year as our methods have improved. The reason our methods have improved is because we have, you know, a science pillar as part of the organization. So we are not the experts in, you know, in absolutely every aspect. So we collaborate with a lot of researchers from around the world. Shelby, you know, we were chatting before. She works with FLAC and FIU and, you know, these other people. And, you know, we do the same. So we'll have researchers coming down who will perform studies using the infrastructure that our restoration sites and our coral nurseries provide. And the data that they gather actually helps us then to further inform our methods. So we're constantly evolving, we're constantly developing, you know, and building on the successes that we have. But it's a constant process of R&D. For example, at the moment, we have a really great problem. We can grow more than 45,000 reef-ready corals every year, but that's far more than we can actually get out onto the reef, because so we have a bit of an outplanting bottleneck, because the outplanting is quite labor intensive, because everything is done under permit from the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. We can't put out artificial structures on the reefs down here. So we're doing it coral by coral at a time. So at the moment, we're actually in the final stages of a pilot program under the science program that's looking at novel outplanting methods to let us get more corals out into the reefs more quickly, larger corals out onto the reefs more quickly. And if the corals are larger, it also means that they can spawn more quickly after they've been returned to the reef. And that's really what we want to see. We want these corals to actually be able to, for their natural processes of recovery to kind of kickstart. So we're creating these sort of refugia of areas of biodiversity, and hopefully these areas will in the future be able to seed other parts of degraded reef. Then we've got our education program, much like the education program Shelby was talking about. So we have a sort of an academic aspect to that. We've got lesson plans and curriculum. It's all open source, all freely available on our website. We do visits and workshops for schools. We offer Skype presentations to classrooms all over the world. But we also have recreational dive programs that allow anybody who's got an interest, even if you're a snorkeler, you can join one of our recreational dive programs. If you're a diver, you can actually come out and physically help us clean the trees. They get biofouled, so we need to be going out, and it's a bit like the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, once you've stopped painting, you paint it, you get to the other end, you've got to start again. It's a bit like that with the trees. You know, you start cleaning the trees, by the time you've cleaned the nursery, you've got to start again. So, you know, if you're a diver, you can actually come out and help us clean the trees. You can actually come out with our teams and help us physically return these critically endangered species back to the wild as well. So yeah, we have a lot going on all the time at CRF.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, both of you. So just to kind of kick it off, I mean, what personally inspired you both to get involved in this kind of work? What led you to the ocean? How did you kind of find your heart in marine conservation work?
Shelby, do you want to take it away? We could maybe do it, you know.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth. Yeah, so I grew up in Florida, loved the ocean all my life, grew up diving, and really what was a moment of a change for me to go more into coral conservation and restoration. I actually got the fortunate chance to go dive the Great Barrier Reef, and you know, you expect to dive into a almost like a scene from Finding Nemo, right? Completely colorful, full of life. And that was the first time that I saw the very extensive bleached reef. And this was actually in 2015. So this is, you know, now there's been a lot more highlight over what's going on with the reefs, but that really just resonated with me. And I was wanting to figure out any kind of way that I can help. And I've studied marine biology since going to college and have been involved with a lot of different restoration projects, and really wanted to dedicate my life to help better conserving our marine ecosystems and improving restoration strategies while also spreading awareness.
Yeah, for me, I mean, this is kind of the family business for me. My dad is a nature conservationist. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, where he was setting up text area management plans for the country, and so I was snorkeling in the Red Sea before I could walk. So coral reefs have always been, I don't know, just a part of sort of almost like family. You know, growing up as a child of a naturalist and a conservationist, I think there was no question that my life and my career would be dedicated to, you know, to kind of continuing this mission. You know, you can't be aware of the threats that our natural world is facing and be informed without wanting to do something about it, I don't think. And I love the ocean. My parents would tell me that, you know, when they would take me snorkeling as a child, they would hear me singing through my snorkel. I learned to dive at 16, and I just kept running away to go diving, to teach diving, to work in you know, conservation and development. And it's just, there's not really been a kind of a conscious choice, I'm afraid, Katie. It's you know, it's just a calling, I guess. It's just a passion. Yeah.
Well, so both of you have spent years in the marine conservation community, working, you know, diving, you know, at the various local, you know, the various levels. You know, you're looking at it, you know, local, national, or international. What are you seeing? You know, what changes are you seeing in terms of like the public perception towards ocean conservation, if any? You know, in the time that you've spent doing this kind of work? Are you seeing a shift, or I don't know, Shelby, if you want to kick that one off.
Yeah, and so I think especially recently, there's been a little bit more consciousness in the public eye of what's going on with our marine environments, and even especially with what's going on right now with the pandemic. I think people are starting to be a little bit more aware of our environment. Like, whoa, you know, there's all kinds of things going on social media of different environments that have had a break a little bit from traffic, from people, and they're seeing a little bit of, you know, less smog in cities, and a lot of fish returning to different areas. And I think people are starting to get a little bit more cognizant of it, but it's getting that need of maintaining that and restoring our environments back to normal. So I think there is a shift, and it's starting to get better, but we need to keep spreading awareness and educating as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think we actually have younger generations to thank for it. You know, the millennial generation, what's the one after that? Is it Gen Z? You know, people who are growing up now, I think, are growing up with a very different attitude and approach to the world. And I think it's really beautiful. It's amazing to see, you know, how young people today are so much more switched on than, you know, my generation, my parents' generation. I think that there is this sort of groundswell of awareness. We've also had some amazing products out there, things like Chasing Coral, the documentary Netflix hit Chasing Coral, that I think has done more for raising awareness about the plight that our coral reefs are facing than almost anything else. But yeah, I think that there very much is. Whether that is at the moment translated to a kind of a legislative level, we're not seeing that. But I think on local and regional levels, we definitely are really seeing more people actually step up. People are starting to realize, I think, that, you know, without these natural systems, our very lives are in jeopardy, and our quality of life is in jeopardy. You know, if you like breathing clean air and seeing natural spaces, you know, we need to be doing more to protect and restore our natural ecosystems. And I think people are starting to become more aware of that fact.
That's great. What do you credit the change to? Do you think the main drivers are nonprofits like yours, or do you think it's businesses like private corporations that are kind of speaking out about this or taking a corporate response, you know, sustainability approach, or is it more grassroots or government? Where do you see the major change shifting? Where do you see that? Maybe Shelby.
I think that's a good question. I think, you know, culture and what a community does has a big impact on how people act in society. And I think there's been a little bit more of a cultural awareness shift to more environmental awareness and responsibility, especially in these coming ages. And so I think it's at a little bit of a deeper rooted area. And then also the ability with social media and the way that we can disperse information now. It's, you know, it's such a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing that we can reach such a broad audience so quickly and send an impactful message, but it's getting that message to resonate. So I think there's a lot of positive that's come out of everything, and hopefully it will continue. Alice, what's your
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo that. I don't think that there is one thing you can point to. I think that there is, you know, it's not just species that evolve, it's cultures that evolve, and it's concepts that evolve. And even though we're seeing the destruction of our natural systems happen very, very quickly, you know, within lifetimes. I've been diving for more than 20 years, and I've seen big changes to shark populations, for example, to coral reef ecosystems around the world in that relatively short period of time. So while in our lifetimes we're seeing quite a rapid change, we have to remember that actually things that might seem to be taking a long time really aren't. So it was not really until the kind of the 1960s that the environmentalist movement really started gaining ground. You know, the Gaia hypothesis came out, Lovelock. You know, this sort of started raising awareness about environmental challenges that our planet is facing as a result of kind of runaway growth, economic growth. And getting that sort of zeitgeist embedded, you know, sort of within consciousness. I know I'm being kind of tautological here, but, you know, having that become part of the zeitgeist, it does take time. So we were raised by people who were who were sort of the Lovelock, the Gaia hypothesis generation. So our parents, I think, have educated us a little bit, right? Then the children of this sort of generation, I think it's just this sort of evolution of consciousness, which, you know, millennials are really taking forward, and then Gen Z as well, is really sort of, you know, it's kind of concentrated, a bit like we see mercury concentrations in fish. I think we're seeing kind of this concentration of environmental consciousness, you know, increasing in, you know, generations. Plus, I think we're really starting to see the impacts, you know, the images that are coming out now. And exactly as Shelby said, you know, we have more access to this information, we have more access to these images. So I think it's very hard to look away.
It sounds like a democratization, really, using the internet, using platforms like that, where it's grassroots, but it's really, you know, it's kind of leveled the playing field, I think, for people to get involved. If that sounds, I don't know if that's fair to say, but it sounds that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Really.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had was, you know, what kind of, the quote that I was really kind of moved by at the beginning of Coral Restoration's video watching this was, you know, the quote by Robert Swan that said, you know, the greatest danger to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. So kind of speaking to that, you know, personal responsibility, obviously, you know, us in yachting or, you know, daily working in the ocean and ocean environment. So what kind of outreach is your respective organizations doing to kind of educate the individual and help shift their mindset? So maybe it's something that they're not thinking about, but need to be thinking about a little bit more. How are you kind of targeting the individual person? I don't know, Shelby, if you want to start.
Yeah, so as far as individuals, we're really wanting to target with that art and memorial aspect, is making it a little bit more of a personal and intimate relationship to the marine environment. You know, I think I grew up in Florida and love the ocean. I've been involved with reefs and diving all my life, and I'm very passionate about it. But how do you get those people that daily might not think about it, or if you're in a landlocked state, how do you get them to engage and care about their daily activities? So we really are targeting trying to make that a more personal relationship. And it also creates a unique diving location. But one of our biggest aspects is, with that ability, we also have the ability to create habitat and provide habitat for fish. And further expanding on the coral restoration component, all of our modules also have the Coral Lock integrated, which we're hoping to test out and hopefully enhance the ability to transplant corals more effectively, especially in this day and age. It's very important to be aware of our resources and time management, because we don't have as much time, and we want to be effective and collaborate and try to get as much as we can done now. So that also, coupled with our education program, we're wanting to educate as much as we can with marine conservation and engage our local communities to take ownerships in the reefs, and also different companies and hotel industries take ownership in your property and the ocean. You know, we're bringing in tourists every year in Florida. Take ownership in those reefs and give back to your community. That's one of our big targets, is taking a research approach, but also really getting involved with the local community.
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because on the one hand, yes, we all need to take responsibility for this. However, I would also say that we also need good leadership on a national and international level. And I think it's critical. I think the single most effective thing that anybody can do is support legislation that supports our natural world. You know, beyond sort of bipartisanship and all of this stuff, you know, we're not talking about whether you're left or right or red or blue. You know, our natural world is absolutely critical. And, you know, legislation that supports its protection and restoration is really vital if we're going to win. You know, we kind of have our finger in the dam at the moment, keeping coral populations viable on the reef while we work to solve and mitigate the impacts of climate change on a global level. But if we don't figure out what to do about our greenhouse gas emissions and our ongoing reliance on fossil fuels, then the work that we're doing is going to be ultimately futile. You know, we can keep coral populations out there for the time being. We've proven that that's possible. We can restore these habitats. But if we don't address these larger issues, the work that we're doing is going to be a drop in the bucket. So that's sort of one part of it. However, I think the other really important point here, and I think that this is one of the lovely things that I love about working with Coral Restoration Foundation, is that it shows that there's hope. There is so much bad news out there. We need to remind people that we still have the capacity to turn this around. And we don't need everybody doing everything perfectly. We need people making imperfect improvements. I think it can be very disheartening when people like, you know, even people who have dedicated their lives to this, we don't always do the best things. You know, I still fly to visit my family in Europe, and you know, if I'm on the road and for whatever reason I've forgotten my water bottle, I might buy a bottle of water. I'll feel terrible about it, you know, but none of us is perfect, and that's okay. We don't need everybody doing everything perfectly. We need people doing things imperfectly. And then the final thing that I would say is, you know, the big message that we have at CRF is, if corals aren't your thing, that's fine. We don't expect everybody to care about corals. It's hard for people to care about the ocean, especially if they're landlocked. But if you find a cause that speaks to you, that's in your backyard, maybe that's restoring a forest ecosystem or a meadow area, you know, something like this, or maybe you're really passionate about eliminating single-use plastic, or whatever it is. If there's one cause that you're passionate about, everything is interconnected. And so whatever it is, do it, and do it wholeheartedly, and talk about it, spread the word. I think that's the most important thing you can do. And these changes that you're making will ultimately impact what's happening in our oceans. There's no kind of one-size-fits-all solution. But I would say at the moment, especially this year, we need people to be sort of encouraging legislation that really protects our natural world. That is the most critical component. We need to be addressing climate change. We need to be encouraging protection for natural ecosystems.
Yeah, that's great. That kind of leads me to my next kind of thought, which was, you know, how are the current policies, regulations, systems that are currently in place, are they sufficient for helping advance, you know, your goals? Are they actually doing what they need to, or are you seeing more work being like needed? You know, what's in place right now that's helping, or is it hurting? I don't know, Shelby, if you want to kick that one off.
Yeah, so certainly I think it's getting better, and we're starting to get legislatively a little bit more aware. There's a lot more mitigation requirements out now, more than there ever was before, and especially, at least I think it depends on the state and also the area of conservation you're targeting. But there is a lot more awareness coming with marine conservation in general, and just as Alice can speak to a little bit more, we've fortunately got a little bit more funding for reef restoration in the Keys as of this past year, and for the first time, I believe, I guess for 2 years, we've had a chief science coordinator consultant for the state of Florida, which was the first ever, Tom Frazier. So that's really great progress, and I think we're starting to get there, but there's certainly still some policy gaps, and working together is the biggest thing that we can do, and also spreading awareness and collaborating with other like-minded organizations to get things done, because we can't just wait for policy changes. We can't just, you know, continue to put things on hold or place blame on other organizations. So it's really, just as Alice was speaking, taking up responsibility. You don't have to be perfect, but even, you know, using less plastic when you can. You don't have to be perfect, you know, can drive your car, but being more aware and taking little withholding certain things sometimes, whether that's, you know, eating less red meat once a week, you know, eat meat once a week instead of 4 days a week. There's little things that we can do daily that really are very impactful, and all of our systems connect. So it's very important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, as Shelby was saying, we're seeing, you know, on one level, yes, definitely, more attention, more policies being directed towards this. However, on a national level, we are seeing the rollbacks of regulations. We're seeing the rollbacks of environmental protection, rollbacks of Clean Water Act, and, you know, protection for national parks and this kind of thing. So I would say there is definitely still work to be done. 100%. It's getting better in some ways. In some ways, it's getting worse. Even though it's getting better, we still have a long way to go. We are still overly reliant on fossil fuels. We are still not really adequately working towards cutting our greenhouse gas emissions. You know, without these sorts of changes, it's going to be a struggle for us to succeed.
Absolutely. No, definitely not lost on me. I mean, approaching this conversation from, a yacht maintenance company that does marine diesel engine work. So I definitely understand that I think there's a seismic shift in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then, moving towards greener products. UN IMO is shifting in terms of standards for engines and like efficiency and things like that. And all of that moves, shifts, the dial, I guess, forward in terms of progress and making sure that these, systems aren't, putting out, byproducts and combustion that, have sulfur and things like that in it. So it's really kind of moving us that way. So I hope, it sounds like you're both heartened by it, but also, still wary that things can shift quite quickly. So something to kind of always stay kind of vigilant and watch. Okay. The question I also had was, in light of everything going on right now, how is COVID affecting your work? Are you greatly impacted with everything being shut down? Are you seeing the ocean surging, like, with new growth and life? Or how has the pandemic affected things?
Well, I'll start. Yeah, we've been very fortunate to still continue all of our work and also deploying more reefs through the pandemic. It's hindered our monitoring progress a little bit as far as how many people we can bring out to monitor the reefs and get some of that work done. But it's been good so far. We've been able to really connect. I think it's been nice to connect with other organizations as well. I think I've been on a lot more Zoom conversations than I ever have before, and it's kind of brought out a uniqueness of we're right here, we can still connect, and it's brought out a more collaborative effort despite, there's a lot of setbacks and a lot of, everybody wants to be back out and together. I think there's been a lot of positive that's also come from this, and also the interconnectedness. So I think that's one really good thing that's come from this, but we're still pushing through. We're really excited about our next deployment at the end of August and hoping to get some more monitoring done. Hopefully we'll be opened up again soon, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, our restoration team's still been going out. We're 75% the way through our outplant goal for 2020 already, which is great. But yeah, we have really taken a hit. So we haven't been welcoming back our volunteers onto boats. Our dive programs, they did open up again. Obviously, we're not able to do tabling events and, this sort of thing anymore. We're not going to schools. I think the biggest hit that we've really seen is in our fundraising. We weren't able to hold our annual gala, which raises significant unrestricted funds for our operations. With other corporations also being hit by the pandemic, it means that their ability to sponsor and donate to the cause is also being hindered. So I think our fundraising, we've all had to reforecast budgets and everything for the coming years because, we are taking a massive financial hit. And I think that that's been so far definitely the biggest impact of COVID. One positive thing that's come out of it though, we normally have an event called Coral Palooza every year for World Oceans Day. And this is normally an in-person event. People come to the Keys and we take a veritable army of hundreds of people out to physically restore reefs with our team on one day. And then we have a big party. Obviously, this could not happen this year, but it gave us the opportunity to pivot very quickly. And if any of you are out there and you want to attend, you can now Google Coral Palooza 2020, and you can see a digital platform that we launched on World Oceans Day that's open until the 25th of August. And it was a great opportunity to really get all of our content under one roof and to open up the event to more people than ever before. So it was a big change, and it was a lot of fun putting it together. There's rooms there from restoration groups around the world. There are videos, there are booths from all sorts of different organizations. So it's sort of a one-stop shop, and you get a bit of a snapshot of what is going on in the world of restoration all over the world. And it's pretty exciting actually to see there are so many people out there working on this issue. It's very encouraging. So if you guys are interested in learning more, you want to see what we did as a result of COVID, which might now become a sort of a regular part of our annual event planning, is doing this digital event. So if you Google Coral Palooza 2020, you can see what COVID forced us to do, but we were very pleased with how it turned out.
Great. Oh, it's great to make the best of it. Fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for those of us that are tuning in today, the majority of us on here, we're all, in the yachting industry. So for those of us involved in this community, what role do you see that we can be playing in kind of supporting your efforts? How can we be better stewards of the environment that we're operating in? Shelby?
Certainly, staying on that same awareness, just even sharing with a friend and being more environmentally aware is a big impact you can have individually. Even if you're not a diver or can help with the actual physical restoration or conservation, there's always something anyone can do. And of course, supporting other organizations, whether or not that's marine-based, anything helps, especially with different environmental conservation organizations. And specific to us, we definitely need as many volunteers as we can, as I'm sure with the Coral, with Alice, they need as many as we can. We're not able to take as many right now, but there's something everyone can do, and also donating and helping build up the reefs.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would also say that, on a daily basis, when you're out there in the ocean, there are things like, don't drop an anchor anywhere near a reef, even if you think it's a sandy patch near a reef. As you know, water moves and you can get drag and this kind of thing. So make sure that when you're anchoring, you're absolutely nowhere near a coral reef. Use mooring buoys when available. Make sure that the detergent products that you're using on board are all biodegradable and reef safe. So that could be your shampoo, your soap, your dishwasher, your dish detergent. Make sure that all of that stuff is biodegradable and it's environmentally friendly. Obviously, don't be dumping plastic. Make sure that you're disposing of your black water and your grey water really responsibly. So those are things, that you can do every day when you're out there on the water. But then, as Shelby said, if you love the ocean, then, you are ambassadors for the ocean. So, follow social media accounts of organizations whose mission speaks to you and share their content. Encourage your friends and family to also get involved and share content. If you can afford to volunteer or, donate your time or your money or whatever, do that. Find the way, not everybody needs to write big checks. It could just be that you're amplifying the message by sharing posts. That's okay. Find the way that makes sense for you to support and find the organization that really just resonates with you. We're all fighting the same fight. We're all pushing in the same direction. So, of course, I would love it if you all want to be, huge supporters of Coral Restoration Foundation, but that's okay if you're not. If it's 1,000 Mermaids that speaks to you, please go and do it, and we applaud you. And if it's something completely different, if like I was saying before, if it happens to be, elephant conservation somewhere or reforesting mangrove areas, all of these things count. They all matter, and they're all contributing to the same positive change for our planet.
Okay. Are there certain measures? I mean, you mentioned I thought it was a great one. Mentioning the green shampoo, different biodegradables on board. Are there certain measures that you recommend that we be kind of incorporating at our workplaces or to the yacht owners themselves about how to be more mindful, how to be more responsible towards the marine ecosystem? So, is there other things that you would that have come to mind that you've seen, or what would be best practice in your opinion?
Yeah, certainly maintaining the reduce, reuse, recycle movement is very important regardless. And just kind of, as she was speaking, using environmentally friendly products, even sunscreen. I think that's definitely a big one, especially with coral reefs. And if you think about, especially in the Keys, it's a livelihood for a lot of people in the tourism, and they're bringing out tourists every single day. And just being aware, if you're a boat operator, of what products you recommend to your clients and making sure they're environmentally friendly. Because if you can think about hundreds of boats going out every day, makes a very large impact over time. So just being aware and as an individual and responsible for what you use and promote is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does add up. You might think, it's not going to make a difference. Also, just be careful, because for example, there's one brand of sunscreen that is called Reef Safe. And if you look at the ingredients, they are all the big no-nos. So make sure that you're actually educating yourself on the names. It's oxyocylate, oxybenzonate. I can't remember. I'm not very good with the Latin, but you can find the sort of the ingredients that are really bad. But yeah, and in your homes as well, in your gardens, you know, avoid chemical pesticides and, you know, chemical weed killers. You know, turn your air conditioning up a couple of degrees, so you're using that does an amazing thing. Swap out all your light bulbs for LEDs. Do meatless Mondays, cycle or walk if you can, carpool, you know, all the stuff that you've heard people talking about for decades and decades. It's all true, and it all really does make a difference.
It all adds up. Okay. For those interested, I mean, we've touched on this, and you both have kind of given different examples, but for those interested, how specifically can we, you know, as YPY members, maybe based here locally, or those if they're, you know, abroad listening in, how can we support your mission and get involved? If we really connect with you, like Alice says, okay, I really find this, you know, I'm passionate about this. What's the best way to get involved?
Certainly volunteering, and if you're unable to volunteer, any kind of donation or sharing is simply one of the biggest things that people can do. We have a lot of different events. We're also doing cleanups. We'll even do we're going to host a little lionfish derby to clean up some of the lionfish that have come to the site. A lot of different events that engages the local communities, and we're also going to start hosting a monthly Zoom call where we'll have a panel where we'll talk on a different topic of marine conservation to spread awareness in our education program, and also provide an opportunity for people to ask questions and hear project updates and ways to get involved. So we're going to do some cleanups, and hopefully as things start to open back up, we'll be getting a lot more engagement.
Yeah, and it's much the same for us, really. You know, at the moment, donations really go a long way, and it doesn't have to be much. You know, the price of a Starbucks every month, you know, if you would buy your coral reefs a cup of coffee once a month, that would be great. You know, that sort of regular, even though it's a small amount, that regular income means that we have an income that we can rely on. And if we get thousands of those, it really, really does add up. So even a small monthly commitment makes a huge difference. You can also come out and dive with us. Our dive programs are up and running, so you can really see it in action, and then see if it's something that you really, really do care about. At the moment, those are the big ones. We also have an online gift shop, so we've got products, all of which, you know, have some sort of sustainability component. So whether it's a clean canteen that you can take with you, so that you're not using plastic cups, steel, metal straws, so that you don't need to be using straws. We sell rash guards and sun shirts, so you don't need to be using so much sunscreen when you're out on the water. So supporting us through the shop is also really good. Following us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, interacting with us that way, and helping to kind of amplify the message that we're pushing out. Our education programs, if you know anyone who is a student or works in education, you know, head over to coralrestoration.org and you can download lesson plans. You can invite us to classrooms. Yeah, there are so many ways. On coralrestoration.org, there is a tab that getting involved, and you can see all the different ways that you can actually get involved and find the way that makes sense to you.
That's fantastic. All right, well, to kind of wrap things up, I mean, we talked about, you know, all the different challenges, the different components, but just to kind of end on like a good high note before we get to the Q&A section, just to leave enough time, what is making, like, what like makes you hopeful at this point? What keeps you doing this work? What keeps you inspired? How are you kind of,
Yeah, so definitely a passion. I think it's just really inspirational to see so many people, even if they don't care about corals. A lot of people are getting engaged, and just seeing people take initiative and ownership is really helpful. And there's a lot of hope. And I think one of the biggest things is the ability to collaborate. I think is one of the biggest ones to help spread awareness and get things done together.
I love that. I think that's so true. For me, also, I think it's twofold. I think the big one is seeing younger people and the upcoming generations really care, genuinely care. That really gives me hope. You know, we're handing off a degraded world to our coming generations, and that's really sad. But I think that the planet is going to be in much better hands. So that gives me hope. And then also just seeing, you know, I'm not diving every day, but when I do go out and I do the restoration work myself, and I see the corals growing, I see them thriving, we've just had spawning season, and our outplanted elk-horn corals were seen spawning, which is the first time that anybody has actually observed the spawning of nursery raised and outplanted elk-horn in the wild. So this is incredibly exciting. You know, corals are much like humans. They will only sexually reproduce when they're in the mood. And for them to be in the mood, they need to be happy, they need to be healthy, they need to have the energy to do that. So the fact that our outplanted corals are spawning is incredibly, incredibly hopeful. So yeah, it's younger people, and it's physically seeing with my own eyes that this works, it's making a difference. We've just got to keep doing it and keep doing more of it. Wonderful.
Okay, well, we have a few minutes left. We have about 8 minutes, so I just want to make sure we have time if there's any questions. I'm just looking at the chat right now, which is growing. So the first question is, how can members across the pond help your organization right now?
So certainly, as Alice mentioned, donations are very helpful. For us, we've been applying for a lot of different grants, but it can be a lengthy process and we're waiting. So we're wanting to get as many reefs out as possible, as well as further doing different design improvements. We use our research to further inform design improvements as we go and making them more efficient, and also collaborating with other organizations. We currently don't have coral to outplant on our sites, but we're looking to, and hopefully partnering with someone like Alice and CRF will provide a good opportunity to. And donations and sharing is one of the biggest things that can help right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely the same for us. You know, every little helps. That cup of coffee or the price of a McDonald's, you know, that will really go a very long way. And then, you know, just following us on social media, helping to amplify the message, sharing our content, encouraging, you know, friends and family to do the same. And then just making those changes. Find, you know, even if you're in the UK, shout out to the UK, even if you're in the UK, you know, finding a local nature conservation organization there and dedicating yourself to that. You know, maybe it's seahorse conservation. There's a fantastic seahorse conservation group over there, or maybe it's a reforestation or a rewilding initiative. You know, do that. That would be amazing. Yes, we would love you to help us at CRF. But if there's something in your own backyard that you can dedicate yourself to as well, that helps too. You know, we're one planet, and it's all connected.
That's great. I also wanted just to make sure before I forgot, just to do a plug, because this month we had for YPY USA kind of designated the month of August, because it's World Ocean Day in August, you know, 25th, as our kind of conservation ocean month. So we did the beach cleanup, but we'd also planned to do a dive trip with CRF this past weekend. So this has been postponed to April 2021. So for those of you that are local, please mark your calendars for that, for save the date. We hope to get that back on the calendar soon. And I've been working with Alice's team to kind of organize that. So stay tuned on that. I'm just looking at the chat right now to see if there's any other questions. There seems to be a lot of interest in talking about hybrid and electric boating. So definitely a lot of buy-in from the yachting community in terms of how to get involved and, you know, kind of growing and moving the, you know, the dial on where things stand. I don't know if there's any other questions right now. If anyone else has anything in the chat before we close in the last few minutes.
I mean, it just makes me think also, you know, if you've got a sailboat, this is great. Sailboats are fantastic. That's one of the greenest ways you can possibly travel. You know, and I love that, you know, that there are, you know, people are looking into kind of electric motors and electric. I know very little about boating, you know, full disclosure. That is not my field of expertise. And anyway, but I love that, you know, that it is starting to change. You know, people are starting to think about these things.
Right.
It's really cool.
Yeah, on board, more green options and things like that are healthy and good for the environment. Well, there's just a few minutes left. I think I'll kind of start to wrap up, unless you have any final thoughts or kind of takeaways that you want everyone to have for the day.
I think the message from us is you know, that we like to say, choose your change. Find the change that speaks to you. Find what it is that resonates with you, whatever it is, and do it. You know, choose your change and then be that change. If every one of us finds that cause and dedicates herself to it, and remember, you don't have to be perfect. You know, small changes really do matter as well.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground today. I think the kind of main takeaway I took was really like, kind of recognizing the role that each of us play, understanding how interconnected everything is, the small choices, individual personal choices we make, whether it's the products that we're using out on the water, at home, what we're consuming, all of that kind of factors into this marine environment. So each can have a big impact in affecting the life below the water. So even if the majority of us here are operating on motor yachts above the water, there's a lot going on down below that we also need to be cognizant of. So I really appreciate both of your time today in terms of helping us kind of navigate these waters and kind of figure out how we can kind of plug in. And we look forward on our side to hopefully working with both of you in the future and kind of continuing the dialogue to keep things moving forward.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Alice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, and thank you everybody out there for tuning in.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. And that concludes YPY USSA's Ocean Conservation panel for today. And stay tuned for upcoming panels the months to come. Please check your social media and email.